And our last presenter before we go to a quick break is Jennifer Thomson from MachineMax. Now, you are the Chief Growth Officer. Now, that is quite a title to have, so hopefully you can inspire us to be more innovative, taking on this morning's theme, and grow as an organisation, as an industry. And Jennifer is going to come and talk to us about working together to deliver data for a purpose. So, Jennifer, welcome to the stage.
Okay. So, thanks very much. I am talking today about working together to deliver data for a better purpose. The spoiler alert is that with the fragmented nature of our industry, unfortunately it can't be done alone, and the best use of our data is through working together with the supply chain. And the benefit is that, the upside is that everyone benefits from that. My name's Jennifer Thomson. I work at MachineMax. At MachineMax, what we do is we codify the decision-making process. So essentially, what that means is that related to primarily equipment, we'll aggregate all kinds of data and the context within which the machines work within, and we'll create it in such a way that you can compare apples with apples, and that then allows our customers to make better decisions by having the right data at the right time. So that in a nutshell is what we do at MachineMax. I think, unfortunately, construction has a bad rap for its inefficiencies quite often, and I'll pull out a few stats, but in 2018, more than $500 billion was spent on rework, and more than 50% of that was through bad data or miscommunication. That is a huge number. 35% of construction professionals' time is often spent on non-optimal tasks. Often you hear about budget overruns in terms of time, money, and the sustainability impact of construction is not news to anyone. I think all of us being in this room, we're all striving for digitalization. I think what goes hand in hand with that is good data. And you can't do one without the other. And that's what we're going to look at today. And the good news is that we all have data. And so it's just about making sure that we can use it to improve that decision-making process, which also means that we can do more with existing resources for less from a financial and a sustainable impact perspective. The benefits are huge. I think it's not new to anyone, but for example, focusing on sustainability with our customers through just understanding how the machines are being used and where there's inefficiencies, we've managed to reduce idling between 3 to 10%, which has resulted in a reduction in CO2 based off fuel burn by 10%. You can improve the efficiencies and the OPEX of running your machines on site, either having less, optimizing and making sure that they're using more, that they are being worked harder. We've seen overall massive cost expenditure decreases, things like cutting down your fuel burn bills. We've had customers cut down plant hire invoices by 10%. So it's just about understanding how those machines are being used, and actually, do we need as many assets as we think we do in order to use it? Increasing productivity obviously helps deliver things on time and under budget. And safety, which is core, by having data, we ultimately are then decreasing the risks that are on site. So the benefits of data are clear. We know about the inefficiencies on construction sites. So the question is, why aren't we using data? And it largely comes down to the fragmented and siloed nature of the construction industry. And I'll give an example, starting with connectivity. Just getting the data off equipment in this day and age still isn't that easy, which is quite interesting given where we are with AI and ChatGPT. But that's the first level. The next level is that actually, with all the different types of equipment and models that are out there, doesn't mean you can use all of that hardware. And some machines give different metrics to others. So that in itself creates quite a convoluted and hard way to build a picture across your entire fleet. The next is that OEMs often have different definitions of certain metrics. So if you have the same category of machine, one might define as idling, what's input into that could be very different to what another OEM defines that as. What's more is that UK is particularly, this is compounded very much so here, is that with such a high rate of plant hire, on a site you have a lot of different asset owners, and usually they are the owners of the data. And so then from a site or project perspective or contractor, to try and get all of that data in a way that you can easily use it, all becomes like a bit of a nightmare. And so I think there's no surprise why we aren't using more data. But I also think this paints a very interesting picture as to why we should work together as a supply chain to try and solve this problem. One point I would also make out is that inherently the people who are required to make the changes are not in order to get good data, are not necessarily the beneficiaries of the output of that data. So it also means that the incentivization isn't quite right. An example of that might be if you've rented a piece of equipment, by having good fuel consumption data, the person who's paid for that to allow that is not going to be the beneficiary of having a decreased fuel bill, for example. So the question is then, what can be done to work together in order to get this? There are some standards in the industry. It's not as dramatic as perhaps the picture that I'm painting. I think what is good is that has set the tone for being able to work together and get a baseline of data. What these standards don't cover off, the standard is AEMP 2.0, is the consistency. So one of the big questions we often get asked is, can you just give us maintenance alerts or different kind of metrics that are coming off machines? And none of that is prescribed. Different models, different OEMs have different amounts of data that they give. So you can't necessarily consistently provide all certain type of alert for all machines on a particular site. The frequency of data. The benefit of data is to be able to act in the here and now. You want to know when something's being used inefficiently, if you can make a change immediately. And more often than not, this data is not live, it's retrospective, and that's a lot harder to make changes when you're getting alerted to potential issues. Data's the new oil, is what everyone talks about. And so what we're starting to see is a lot of hoarding of data. But given the industry and the way in which the supply chain is set up, actually that becomes quite hard, because then it means that there are lots of systems solving the same problem for perhaps the same types of machines, because everyone feels that they need to have their own system to generate that data. It also means that you can't look at this typically from a neutral perspective and map out who can use the same set of data, and it also compounds the inefficiency in terms of paying for different systems. And lastly, the standards, what they don't have right now is an element of future-proofing. So with the advent of electric vehicles coming in, for example, there's nothing to do with the power, any of the wattage, any kind of electrical implication. If we're looking at alternate fuels, there's nothing prescribed in what the fuel type is. So the long and the short is that the standards that are there are great. I think what we see is that we need to work together as an industry to agree on what useful metrics are so that everyone can work towards a common goal. And the question is, how do you start? And that's what MachineMax is specialized in, is that saying, actually, we have a pretty good idea of who are the people who are making decisions with the sets of data. What are those decisions that are being made? How is the data flowing to inform those decisions? And actually, how is data being consumed? Because the answer is not another platform. When you get to a site, there's already a lot of those. And so the idea is that by spending some time in each of these different areas, you actually can craft a really good strategy that allows data sharing amongst the supply chain. And I'll give you a good example. We've listed just a few of decisions that may need to be made relating to equipment. So for example, it could be, I would like to reduce my CO2 from my overall fleet. I would like to increase productivity. I want to have a safer workplace. I want to keep my total cost of ownership of my assets reasonable. I want to know where they are and how can I increase revenue. It's just some examples. But if we break that down, typically the kinds of questions that the client or the end construction customer might be, they're really focused on emissions. They want to make sure that there's a safe workplace and that the deliverable can be done with minimal cost. And this is from perspective of machines. The main contractor is of course interested in those, but also wants to know if they're getting a fixed budget, they would like to improve their efficiency of the equipment, obviously do more with less, want to make sure that the team is able to operate it, increase the revenue where they can, and just to know where their machines are. If you then look at your plant hires, who ultimately are providing those equipment, they want to know that same kind of information. But in addition to that, they want to know what reliability they can get from their fleet, the average aging. They want to reduce the cost of running that fleet, and overall just making sure that they have a good handle on those assets that are generating the revenue for them. Then if we take a sidestep in the supply chain, there's tech providers such as us, as well as dealers who want to know things like, I want to be able to service my customers' equipment. What are the hours of these machines? Can we better provide services and provide parts to them? And just in general, people on the periphery who are trying to look at that information. Now, the cool thing is that all of those decisions are using the same underlying set of data. There is one can on a machine. There's one weather station on a site where that machine is operating. The idea is that actually all of this data is coming from a finite set of metrics that everyone's using slightly differently. So working on that, we then mapped out, if we just took two sets of data, the finite number of metrics that are coming from a machine and weather, let's categorize the type of metrics. So you might get CO2 from your machines, you might get idling, utilization. We then categorized them into certain pillars and looked at how they mapped and how that data flows within a company. So within a contractor, who are the departments who are using that data to make decisions under these different lenses. And as you can see, that data is flowing around everywhere, and that's even within a single company. But we've already gone through, within the entire supply chain, how that same set of data also helps everyone else. So it's really interesting in taking a step back and seeing who can use the data, how can they use it, and why. And that then has created certain themes around the data. You've got things like your machine metrics, which is traditional data coming off your machine. You then have contracting data, particularly if you're hiring in machines. What date did they arrive on site? When did they leave? Who is the provider of it? Your operational metrics, more from a productivity perspective. You've got your sustainability metrics, and okay, yeah, productivity and operational. So there's only a finite set of data. It's being used by lots of different people, and the way that the industry has been set up is that we're creating lots and lots of systems to use the same data, which is then perpetuating those inefficiencies. So the plea and what we do is work with our customers and take a step back, map that all out so that we can work together to deliver all of this. And by doing that, as someone referenced this graph earlier, which made me a little bit happier, is that move construction from one of the most inefficient industries and digitalized industries all the way up by working together so that we can improve that productivity. I think that's me, and thank you very much.